On a rain-slick Manhattan night, the kind where neon blurs into the pavement and every streetlight looks like a painter's brushstroke dragged across wet asphalt. A billionaire CEO was in the back of a black sedan, tapping through urgent reports like a man trying to stop a leak with his bare hands. Ethan Cross had a $400 million satellite about to miss its launch window, and in the front seat his Uber driver, a woman in her late 20s with a leather jacket and gold hoops, glanced at his screen and calmly said, "That will not work." He looked up, more amused than anything. What would a driver know about quantum encryption? But Ava Johnson kept her eyes on the road, saying, "Enough to keep your satellite from burning up 200 miles above Earth." That line hit like a pebble breaking the surface of a still pond, and for the first time that night, Ethan's focus shifted from his crisis to her. Ava's life had been equations and possibility once. She grew up in Detroit with a science teacher mom and a mechanic dad who could braid her hair before school. The kind of father who took her to abandoned airfields to watch meteor showers and promised, "One day you'll send something up there." She earned her way into a prestigious grad program in quantum information science, solving physics problems faster than her professors could write them. But then her father collapsed at work. The bills piled up, and she left school to keep her brother in classes and help her mom hold on to the house. Uber became her lifeline. Most nights, when she parked her car, she'd turn to a battered whiteboard in her apartment and scribble quantum state diagrams for no audience but herself. The dream never left, she just carried it quieter. Now, in this car, Ethan's satellite system, Atlas Link, was 48 hours from launch, bleeding data through an entanglement fault no one on his global engineering team could trace. Ava saw the logs reflected in his screen and told him his calibration was introducing thermal noise right when entanglement needed stability. He laughed it off, but she reached into the glove box, pulled out a napkin, and sketched a fix so clean it made his CTO message back. "Who is this?" She just solved the decoherence cascade. By the time Ethan got home, the board was warning him not to let an outsider touch their systems. His chief scientist bristled at the idea of a driver with a guess. Investors whispered liability. He'd built his career on trusting rare competence, but had the scars from trusting the wrong people. Across the city, Ava sat with a blinking email cursor, debating whether to offer help or let the problem eat itself. He called with conditions. 1 hour, supervised access. She accepted. In the conference room, she slid into the network and found something everyone else missed: a backup photon source drifting just enough during realignment to tear the system apart. Her solution: adaptive synchronization. Dynamic phase estimation, slowing the handover like a breath, not a lurch, was deployed minutes before the realignment window closed. The telemetry steadied, errors vanished, alarms went silent. The engineers stared at the screens, but Ethan kept his eyes on her, as if her voice had tuned the room. When it was over, he asked, "Who are you?" And she told him, the aerospace recruitment that turned into tokenism, the credit that slid into other hands, the opportunities rationed until leaving was the only move. Support, she said, turned out to be a word with no budget. Ethan saw himself in that. The offhand dismissal he'd given her in the car, the wall a casual slight, could become when repeated by people with power. "I was wrong," he said, plain and unvarnished. "You see me now," she replied, steady as a fixed star. At the Atlas Link press event, Ethan credited her by name, then announced she'd be the new lead quantum systems architect and that the company was funding scholarships for women of color in STEM. Ava took the mic and spoke straight into the cameras. "They may doubt you, laugh at you, even try to erase you, but your brilliance doesn't disappear just because they can't see it. Keep the work. Keep the notes no one asks for. Keep the late nights no one applauds. And when the door opens, carry your whole self through it." Weeks later, Ava drove a familiar route, but took a different turn, parking at a glass and stone lab where her name was etched on the door. Her badge was permanent now. The whiteboard inside was bright and unscarred. She still wore her hoops, still smiled at strangers, but the quiet weight in her stance said she no longer had to prove she belonged every hour of the day. That Friday, she stood in a high school auditorium, her mom in the front row, her brother leaning forward in pride. She told the students about the sky as a patient listener, about holding on to the part of your mind that doesn't flinch, about being your own first believer. Your brilliance doesn't disappear just because they can't see it, she said again. And this time she smiled like she knew exactly how far that truth could travel. Somewhere far above, a network held steady to a rhythm she taught it to hear. Down here, a different orbit was beginning, one that might just rewrite who gets to steer the future. Now it's your turn. Tell me, was Ethan right to bring her in against every warning, or was it reckless? Where's the line between protecting an asset and trusting a stranger? Drop your thoughts below. We read every word, and sometimes the right answer changes the whole trajectory. The weeks after Atlas Link's flawless launch were supposed to be quiet. A glide phase where systems hummed in orbit and the company rode the glow of good press. For Ethan, that glow burned hot for exactly 8 days before the first shadow fell. A strange packet loss spike coming from a partner ground station in Chile, then a second, this time from Norway. Inside the glass lab where Ava now worked, the air carried the low thrum of cooling fans and the dry scent of marker ink from her whiteboard. She'd been mapping a new lattice encryption when Ethan walked in without his usual armor of boardroom formality, a folded printout in his hand. "Tell me this doesn't look familiar," he said. It did. The pattern in the logs wasn't random. It was almost too clean, as if someone had been studying Atlas Link's architecture and knew exactly where to tug. Ava's eyes narrowed. "This isn't system decay," she said quietly. "It's an intrusion attempt, and not from an amateur." Ethan pulled up a secure feed from their cybersecurity team, red markers blooming on a global map like a rash. "They're probing the entanglement nodes," he said. "If they get past the estimator, they could mimic our signal." Ava's mind spun through possibilities. Mimicking the signal meant hijacking the network. Someone could send falsified data through Atlas Link without anyone knowing. In the wrong hands, that was a geopolitical nightmare. And then came the twist. The probes matched a signature she'd seen before, buried in an old project she'd worked on years ago at the aerospace firm that had pushed her out. The signature belonged to a team she'd once trusted, including a senior engineer who'd smiled in her face while taking her code. Ethan saw her expression harden. "You know them," he guessed. She didn't deny it. "They're going after your satellite because they think no one here will recognize their fingerprints," she said. "They're wrong." The next 48 hours became a war room blur. Ava and a skeleton crew sealing off vulnerable nodes. Ethan working phones to pull clearance from government liaisons who were suddenly very interested. At one point, a Department of Defense contact patched in and asked Ava point-blank if she could stop the breach without taking the network offline. "You want the truth?" she said. "If we move slow and polite, they win. If we go fast and ugly, we have a chance." It was fast and ugly. She rerouted entanglement keys through a decoy lattice that looked vulnerable but led attackers into an endless loop of self-corrupting data. For 6 tense hours, the intruders hammered at what they thought was the core, burning their resources while the real system stayed untouched. By dawn, the probes were gone. But victory didn't come clean. The decoy revealed a new problem. Someone on the inside had granted clearance codes to make the attack possible. The list of who had that clearance was short. Very short. Ethan stared at the names. 2 were senior board members. 1 was the chief scientist who had dismissed Ava as a driver with a guess. The fallout wasn't subtle. Ethan called an emergency session. Ava walked in beside him, no longer a visitor, her badge swinging at her side. When confronted with the logs, the chief scientist tried to mask his panic under a flood of technical jargon. Ava cut him off with a single sentence. "You compromised the network for personal gain, and you underestimated the wrong person twice." By the end of the day, the board voted to remove him. And as the door closed behind the man who had once looked through her, Ava realized something. This wasn't just about satellites anymore. That night, Ethan stood with her by the observatory's rooftop deck. The city lights spread below like constellations. "You could walk away now," he said. "No one would blame you." She shook her head. "Not yet. There's still work to do." And somewhere in the shadows of another city, a different boardroom was already watching her name rise. Not as a footnote this time, but as a problem they couldn't ignore. So tell me, should Ava keep fighting in a world that once shut her out? Or is the smarter move to take her win and leave before it turns on her again?